dog out of the room. So, yeah, it goes way back to 2000. I think is 2001 is when we first published the first GAXMOOR. I'm looking at the map that Peter Bradley did for the CNC version. I wish I had sent you the map for the original version. Then we could kind of do a cascading thing.
Well, you know, so I'm not sure if I have the original version. If you have it, and by the way, Ernie, we are live.
Right,
people were beginning to ask about the stream, so I was like, I'm going to start this thing. I do have the Troll Lords chat up, so you know, as we start getting people coming in asking questions, I will let you both know. What was the original map, Stephen? And I asked because I also found in my hunting around this kind of semi 3D one.
That's probably it. The one that so that's the original one. Now, Ernie, you're going to have to correct me because I remember, you know, when we started talking about this back in, I think, 2000, somehow that's the David Zen's version map right there. I believe that's David Zen's who did that map. Did you have an original that you sent me?
Yes, that was from David Moore. David L. Moore, who was the prisoner in the Florida system.
That's right.
That's right. And Luke had it, and he must have sent it to you, and because we were using that to run our play tests. First at the Game Guild, and then later on, we were running it at the Williams Bay Library, and because at that point we had such a large group of kids, and the Game Guild was going through some changes. Well, it was falling apart. Margaret and Don were on the outs, so they were just trying to.
So when was that original map drawn?
Probably 1999.
Okay.
The way I had it drawn is that I was originally, this was a fellow that was writing to a hobby shop in St. Louis that was in partnership with the Game Guild. We had paid off some debts or something they had, and supposedly they were a wonderful organization we were saving, but at least according to David and others, the guy was just taking money and not fulfilling mail order.
That could be a problem.
Yeah, never a good thing.
So here's this prisoner complaining about not getting stuff, and then I find out that he's on 23-hour lockdown in solitaire, where he gets to go out for 1 hour in a cage. He was a car thief who had a 2-year rap going, and then he did an escape, and so they added on more years, and then he tried to escape again and hurt a guard and actually got out of the building before he got captured. So he was doing 20 years.
Oh, wow.
At the time. And of solitaire.
I've got to be honest with you. At one point here, I thought you were talking about a fantasy game, and I was like, oh no. This is a true story he's telling.
Yes. So this guy is incredibly bored, going out of his mind, but he should have thought of that before he was doing things that physically hurt another human being in a correctional institution, or stealing cars for that fact. But his mind, you know, he had a good mind, but he was more evilly motivated when we would talk. You know, his alignment was not set on the basic Christian ethos. But at the same, so I started writing a play-by-mail D&D with him for about 3 adventures.
Oh.
And that's takes a lot of work. And see, I was otherwise running games for the kids all the time, and I just said, I know you're out of your mind here or whatever, but it's not my fault. But I want to give you an option. I said, let's do something useful because I'm running games all the time for the kids out of the hobby shop dungeon, the dungeon hobby shop dungeon. So why don't we create something? And I said, and I'll be playing it with the kids or whatever, and I'll be giving you feedback so you have something to do with all your time. And he was in a place where they wouldn't even allow him to have a pencil or a pen. That's hard. He would have a jelly pen. So to get him all the books, he had money to buy the 3rd edition books is what I was buying him. at the time, but I had to cut all the cardboard out of them. So I had to take X-Acto knives and carefully peel everything. It took me over an hour for every book. So here I am doing all this, and then I'm taking, to help him to be able to make these maps, to only let him get pads of graph paper and his gooey pen that just bends in his hand because they don't want to give him a weapon. So when I'm doing the books, I took tons of Elmer's glue and to stick the labels back to, as well as use Scotch tape. But I did Scotch tape on top of Scotch tape on top of Scotch tape to get like a layer of like 7 layers of Scotch tape on everything, because he took Scotch tape to firm up the pen to make it solid so he could draw.
Wow.
And the glue he used, he only got 1 cup. That plastic cup he drank from, he also used to reconstitute the Elmer's glue to make it so he could take these individual sheets and then make a giant map to then send me in the mail with all that. So he did all kinds of things for me. He got tons of times of entertainment, as well as somewhere around $500 or something over the years that I gave him in commissary money to help out in the old days. Now, the maps are not anything at all like current maps or even the old maps. Steve and the guys changed them.
So now I honestly can't remember. Did you send those? So what we're looking at now on the Twitch is the David Zins one. Can you see that?
No.
Okay, all right. So I'm like 90% certain that's the David Zins, the 3D one, the one we put out with the first GAXMOOR.
Okay.
But now the maps that John Moore sent you, John Moore was his name, right?
No, David.
David Moore. The maps that David, I vaguely remember him. I didn't talk to him myself, but I do remember he did a little bit of mapping for Gary for the Canting Crew too, if I remember. I vaguely remember some kind of involvement of his in like a bridge that he mapped out. Is that?
Doesn't hit anything with me at all, because Dad didn't talk to this guy. Dad only talked to me, and he could only get things back and forth from a valid store.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm misremembering that. But anyway, so what happened to them? Did you send those maps to me, or did you send them on to David Zins, or do you remember?
I don't know.
Have no
See, Luke had them in the last, because Luke was running. I had created everything. I created this whole thing out, and then Dad said, "Well, your brother Luke is getting to be about the right age." So what my dad did is I had a ton of statues, because David had created all kinds of. He's the one who created ideas for statues throughout the place.
Oh, very cool.
Okay, that was his idea. His idea was he loved Rome. So I mean, that's a far thing from you, right, Alyssa? But he loved Rome, and he probably couldn't go into the periods like you could, but he liked the idea and the whole concept. And of course, even the society of Rome fit well with him, with the strong ruling. There was definitely a lawful evil kind of concept in his mindset. That's why there's so much poison with the black feather peoples and things too. They would have no reasons not to be using the finest poisons they could have as a mercenary group of bad guys.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? It just occurred to me. So let's take a step back, Alyssa, if you don't mind. I'll give a quick idea of what GAXMOOR is.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Ernie can jump in. So GAXMOOR essentially is it's a city setting where you can take your players in at first level, at any level, really up to about 10th or 12th level. There's dozens and dozens of areas in there that you can have all kinds of encounters, both with monsters and NPCs, all kinds of stuff. You could play in GAXMOOR for a very, very long time. Luke and Ernie wrote in, it's both easy to play, just 1 or 2 game sessions, or you can do a giant campaign session. And the whole thing is this kind of semi-Romanesque city that has been abandoned. It was part of an empire, right? It was abandoned, and now you've got these fighting factions tearing the ruins to pieces.
It was under assault. It was under assault from a Cambion, a half demon, half something else, which they would have to find out more from the information. And he was leading his hordes of nasty guys to destroy the city and sack it. And it was the city of the Wandering God. And while he wasn't able to necessarily fight to stop this, what he did is, as the city was under assault, he lifted it out of its plane of existence with all the other reinforcements and equipment that this bad guy would have had, and tore it and moved it to whatever world setting you guys are using.
Right.
Okay, so it's been pulled from its own home, but it was pulled with all these invading groups and stuff. So suddenly, it would have been like D-Day after the Falaise pockets, after the breakout, but suddenly there's no more reinforcements, there's no more equipment, and so there's still some Imperials left hiding out. There's all the different factions that were under pay working together that are now broken up and scattered about the city. So we've got all sorts of bad guys everywhere that don't necessarily like each other, but they were all together for a common cause, for loot and pillage and whatever. And once the scenario changed, now all of a sudden everybody is just trying to figure out how best to improve their own station and their place in life.
And that's actually one of the geniuses of GAXMOOR, is because it was pulled out of its realm of existence, its plane, and put into this pocket dimension. Now that it comes back, whatever setting you're playing, your own homebrew, your own campaign, our World of Air, Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, it doesn't matter. You can drop GAXMOOR right into it and begin playing immediately, because the idea is it's come back to the world. So it's this fantastic city setting, and the map that Alyssa has up right now is the original map. GAXMOOR was published in 2001 as a soft cover. It's the first time we did it, and then again later as a Castles and Crusades variant. First one was for 3rd edition, and now we've just released the 5th edition version. And the 5th edition has Alyssa's map, which has brought the map really up into the stratosphere. I mean, the job you did on that, Alyssa, is astounding.
Fantastic. Yeah,
it is fantastic.
I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
I think we really have to try to figure out how to use that map and not go back to original maps for a reprint. It's just way. It's an upgrade. It's like going back to my chicken scratch work with the Dungeon Hobby Shop instead of the maps that that Ben's done and wow. Right. With there's worlds of things to show, but the Lost City of GAXMOOR is just an opportunity for people to be able to work up first level characters. We've had as many as 18 people playing in it at a time. Okay, because that's when I would run the game guild, the games would go up to 18, 19 people. And before that, at the Dungeon Hobby Shop, I ran games up to 22 people at a time with the Hobby Shop dungeon. So I try to create things that are made to allow large groups or small groups to function. But so you're going to have the option of really huge fighting and battles. So the idea is, just like the original game, is not to just go and fight everything. Everything is not ready for you to fight. You are more scouting. You're pathfinders. You go, find what you can get, loot what you can, and then you may even have to make deals and talk to peoples that are not friends of yours, yet you have common foes. And that's how a lot of GAXMOOR has worked.
It is literally like a giant. What was that movie that came out a few years ago? The Gangs of New York.
Yes.
It kind of reminds me of that, because you've got all these gangs that are all fighting for the 5 points, and suddenly your characters are thrust into the middle of that. Now you got to figure out who's your friend, who's your foe, and all of that mess. And at first level, you got to be careful. You got to be real careful.
Still doing, but I got to play test, even though I wrote everything except for the graveyard. I started like one thing in the graveyard, and then when my dad said, well, your brother Luke should get involved in this too, it's about time for him to start getting into writing, besides the module he did for Gamma World with my dad, the Legion of Gold, or I don't remember exactly what it was called. So then Luke spent a lot of time working in the graveyard, and the graveyard is very deadly. And I don't know, there's probably some really good treasure, but my brother's a little thriftier. Handing out things.
Well, now I want to do an analysis of the writing, actually, of the GP value of certain areas.
Well, just get some nice high level characters and go in the graveyard if you want to as a test. But don't, it's like going into Tomb of Horrors. Don't necessarily feel, great love for your character. I ran out of the middle of the Tomb of Horrors after I got a magic ring and some poison that would have killed anything. No savings from poison, and I figured that was good enough. I'd left.
I don't think I ever survived in the Tomb of Horrors more than 30 minutes. I always died.
Well, the Lost City of Gaxmoor has a large amount of stories from all those playtests, and one of the silliest is when they'd got a good situation set up where there's these gnolls leading a whole bunch of dwarven slaves carrying like caravan goods or something from a loot, and the party is able to use the ruins and do an ambush. But one player is playing the brand new barbarian class or whatever, and I'm still Unearthed Arcana. I only try to play hits and misses. I don't take it all as canon like the other books. But anyway, this guy with his barbarian, he was just going into the army. He signed up. He hadn't done his basic yet, and he was going away in a month or something. And so he steps out like 100 yards ahead of the ambush. He's supposed to be the guy closing the door, but instead he steps out, pulls out his sword, and shouts out his battle cry, thereby making it so no one's in position for the ambush. That's what you get when you have large. Yeah. Spoiling the whole situation.
So someone asks, King Kothar asks, is there a robust undercity like the Free City of Greyhawk? So now there's the sewers, and they're not really fleshed out yet. I know that's been, we've talked about that quite a few times. And then there's the undercaverns that Luke did, is that right?
Yeah, the undercaverns were his job, and that was purely, that's a real mini module. Compared to the vast scope of GAXMOOR, right. That's probably something that's maybe a single or a couple sessions. Rather than
it's like 30 rooms, if I remember.
Yeah.
I got it here. Kind of looking. I think it's about 30 rooms in the Undercaverns.
Yeah,
but that's not really like this Undercity beneath GAXMOOR, right?
No, there's. It's not like what was it, Seattle or wherever, where there was something built on the other parts of the city. But there is a lot of under stuff, and there are connections, and there's all kinds of ways for the people to have for their home setting and the spot where they rest in between adventures. Whether they do it with the Sobeki, whether they do it in the Shapely Siren brothel, there's all sorts of spots where they can make into their home. And it's marked in the GAXMOOR text where you can go down into the sewers, and where you can come back up. Yeah, yes. That's the map there. So there's a lot of, it's not quite an undercity, but there's a lot of stuff that you can use with, which most cities would just be kind of a simple sewer system, to get waste out of it and what have you. So I don't think there's not really a giant undercity, but you can do it. I mean, you can build onto it, and I would love to expand GAXMOOR. I'd really like to do a supplementary book on the sewers themselves. That would be kind of cool. Well, the idea is that GAXMOOR was a completely controlled environment before the assault. So, I mean, it would be like taking Rome and saying what was happening underneath Rome or whatever. Well, nothing much was happening except for groups sending people underneath to maybe do spying or thieving or something like that. To come up somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's actually the joy of the GAXMOOR setting, because you can literally, because you don't have to worry about anything beyond what you're given. You can drop it anywhere. And it looks like I got to try to let my Siberian Husky in.
Yep.
Behind the spot where I moved my computer out a little bit and is blocking the door, so I'll see if I can still let her in. That's the Husky's the young one. She's only 1.5 years old, and she's full of. And everybody's happy because Mom came back after a couple-day vacation at a water park. So, and everybody's like, "Yay! Come on, Corona!"
Stephen, I gotta be honest with you, man. I want to put hands on those original maps, and I know I heard your interest growing on that too.
Yeah. I've got this. I can go look for it if you want. I'm not certain where. I think I know where I put it, but I've got the original. So when David Zins did and I don't know much about the art terminology, but when he did the original map for Troll Lord Games, he drew it out, and there's transparencies. So it's got like 5 or 6 transparent levels that you kind of lay on to it that you can see through, and you can see where he drew and whatnot. And I've definitely got that. But I've got these tubes of art, and I haven't looked in them in I don't know how many years. It's over a decade probably, because this came out. The original GAXMOOR was published in I won't check the copyright date, but I think it was 2001.
I think it was too. I just started working at laboratories.
Yeah, so it actually released in January of 2002. So we went to press in December of 2001. So I had tons and tons of art in those days. I mean, that was before a lot of what we have now. So artist Dave sent all of his art in, and we had to scan it in and then kind of go through whatever. Were we using Photoshop? I can't remember what we were using. Probably Photoshop.
Back then, like Corel Draw or something, probably.
It was. I know we had PageMaker to do layout. I remember that. But I don't know on the Photoshop things. And in those days, Matt Golden was still with the company, and he did the design. He did the covers and map side of the art side of stuff, and then he would send it to me, and I would put it in layout in PageMaker. And you can see some of the early books we did. I had no idea what I was doing, and it shows. I mean, some of those books are not well laid out. Good content, but the books themselves lacked a little bit. But so I'm curious. Now I'm gonna have to go dig those tubes out and see what's in those tubes. If Luke sent that stuff to me, or if there was some other art that was done and then sent to me, or if I was cut out of the loop and it was sent to Dave Zins. It's been 2 decades. I honestly can't remember how we did that.
Well, it was kind of important to me that we really changed all of David's maps, so that even though he was the inspiration, it really wasn't his work. But the inspiration was just I was getting too lazy and tired of doing this solo adventure for someone for just being a good guy.
Right. Hey, play-by-mail's tough. I've still got Davis's from back in the 1970s. So Davis, for those of you who don't know, Davis Chenault is my brother, co-founder of Troll Lord Games with me and Matt Golden, and he co-created Castles and Crusades and writes a whole bunch of stuff for us. But Davis did, and I've still got the game in the notes. He did play-by-mail Hyborian Age, where you're playing one of the kingdoms in the Conan, universe, and fighting. And he did all that stuff play-by-mail back in the 1970s. So it was time-consuming and slow. Not quite like today.
Yeah. And the old, my dad started doing diplomacy by mail. And that's how a lot of war games were made, with 1 month turns, 1 month real-time turns.
Yeah, I remember that. Now I never did it. I never did the play-by-mail, but I remember Davis doing it. He and I shared a room when we were kids. So we started playing Dungeons and Dragons in 70. He started before I did. He started with the Little Bitty Brown books in like 75 or something like that. And I started in 76 or 77, somewhere around in there. Yeah, I remember it was very interesting watching him write all that out. Put it in the envelope, send it off in the mail.
Yeah.
And then you wait.
So the original maps would just what was really good about that is that this man was able to get an escape for a while.
Yeah, it's good. I mean,
as well as motivate me.
We don't really anymore, but we used to get a lot of letters from prisoners, and want questions about the games and content and whatnot. It changed when PDFs, I think, became a little bit more available because they could get access to stuff. But talking about that pen that you were talking about, we had a guy email us and said he just started playing Castles, not email us, but send us a letter. He just started playing Castles and Crusades, but they wouldn't let him have dice in the thing or pencils. Is there anything that we could do to help him create dice? So Mark Sandy, you may remember Mark, Ernie. Mark's an engineer by training, and he worked for us running the print shop for years and years. what he did is he sat down, and I've got his prototype somewhere. We sent it to the guy, but it's you take a piece of paper, you make it into a circle, and he put 20 divots in it. You fold it 20 times, and then you mark them 1 through 20, and you put your cigarette in the middle of it, and you flick it. And when you flick the cigarette, it goes around the circle, and it ends up on a number somewhere, and that's what you got to hit. So he created the set of dice, and we sent it to the guy. I don't know if he ever used it or not, but hopefully.
Well, with Tractics for our first 20-sided die, it wasn't a die at all. It was a metal coffee tin, one of those little half tins, with poker chips with the numbers 1 to 20 stamped on, because they had those little things where you could stamp in there and then seal it in there so you could like attach it to devices that are this belongs to me or which child or whatever else. And so that's how we would draw. We would draw above our head and pull a check. That would be the number to see if you hit.
That's cool.
Because we didn't have 20-sided dice. All we had were 6-sided dice. And then the school supply store. That's where Dad saw all the polyhedron dice sets. And I think they were $3 in those days.
For like math questions or something. Aren't the original dice for like?
It was a school supply, and someone recently just showed an ad. It has some guy with the different little cube sizes and things coming out like of his brain. So it was something being used, and we were getting so many dice from this school supply store. They said, "You're asking for more dice than we ship to everybody else. Here's our supplier in Hong Kong."
Nice.
Okay, so that's when we started having all those cheap Hong Kong dice and all that mess. And the stories with the dice problems and things with TSR trying to make their own dice.
I'm still using in my weekly game. I'm still using the dice that we had in the basic set. They're almost like marbles now. They just roll and roll and roll. They eventually stop, but.
So what is this map that we're looking at then on the screen? When did this one come along?
So that's going to be the map that came out with the first version in 2001, 2002, and that's this. It was a soft cover book. And it would have gone in the back with a little bitty. Oh, well, hell, there's one right here. Oh, man, I got a pristine copy. Let's see. So I'm pretty sure it's black and white, and it's going to be just like they're seeing there. Nope, we did a sepia toned. I got to tell you, I'm a little reluctant to yank this thing out.
Yeah, don't yank it out.
It's kind of a collector's edition at this point. But surely I've got one somewhere around here. It's a sepia tone. So this gray that you see here was just done sepia tone with black, text and whatnot. And that's the original map that came with the Lost City of GAXMOOR for 3rd edition, which was put out in 2001, 2002. Now here's a little piece of trivia for those of you out there. So when we originally signed with Gary Gygax in 2000, and he and I began working immediately, and he wanted to put out the Gygaxian Fantasy World series, and that's what we were working on. Well, on my end, I was working on something called The World of Aird, which was based on a campaign setting that we had released in 2000, and I was expanding that. And then he mentioned the GAXMOOR stuff. This is this great adventure, and we were super excited about that. So Gary really didn't like to write adventures by the time I started working with him. He was kind of done with that. But I cajoled him after many emails to write an introductory adventure for the Lost City of GAXMOOR, and for it to appear in my book, The Codex of Aird. So it appears in this version, not in the one that we sell now. This is the original version, and it's long since out of sale, and that's Gary's property, so we can't resell it. But if you have that version of the Codex of Aird, there's this little 3-page, maybe 4-page Knoll adventure. It brings you into this farmer's stead that leads you to the Lost City of GAXMOOR, and then you can plunge into the madness that is brought to us by Ernie and Luke there.
Well, what Dad did, besides to bring my brother Luke in, he also said that these statues are boring. You've got so many wonderful statues, but they don't do anything. So he said, I'm bringing Zagig, the Mad Archmage, into the city of GAXMOOR, and he's just going to start making these statues do cool things. So he wrote me up a list of 50 different ideas on the statues. And then he gave me 10 of them with at least several lines of information besides just the name and what to do. And then on one of them, he drew it out, this incredible hypnotic gas trap and all this. And he said, here's one done for you. Here's 9 more ideas that I've just started on. Here's 40 other concepts that you can just play with, and then do more. He said, fix this thing, make this thing. So yes, the statues are great, but it's all from my dad's head to say, come on, make this special, make this something more than anybody else's module setting.
Well, and there's 76 or 75 statues in there, and they actually really add a very unique flavor to that adventure when you're wandering those streets of the lost city, and these statues, some benign, some not. It can add a whole new level to what you're doing.
Yeah, that's. I mean, Dad really wanted to say, "Come on, you've got great ideas, and I know you're running games. Now do something about it. Let's share it with the world." So it was his motivation, and he got my little brother's 11 years younger, so whatever, he was still fairly young at the time.
I actually remember going. We did a bunch of bar hopping. That Gen Con in 2000, you and I and Luke and Davis, and if I remember, you and I left everyone behind, and just, man, we wandered everywhere in Milwaukee. I mean, all over Milwaukee. It was a lot of fun. That was a great evening. We did that a few times, Ernie.
Yeah, that's when booze was still fun. Sadly, sadly, it doesn't work anymore for me. I still.
Yeah, me either. It's kind of back. It's kind of back there.
I'm hoping our state will somehow join in with the other progressives and allow a little Mary Jane, a little Mother Earth or whatever.
It's slowly creeping across the country.
Yes, I know. We're just having to run against all the concepts that that from the past, from reefer madness up. But yes. So the lost city of GAXMOOR it was just so much fun because every Saturday I opened up the store, which was cleaning up after the Friday night mess, and I would get everything ready. And my brother Alex, who was just a real young kid, would come in, and he would have to help me for like an hour. But then he'd get free computer time, because in those days you would charge people money to play on computers and use your disc games. But we had them LAN networked so that 5 people could play in the same game if they wanted to. Duke Nukem or whatever shoot 'em up they wanted to do. Or even
Nukem was a great game.
Baldur's Gate, all these others where they could do all this sort of thing together. So but as soon as noon would come in, Ken Whitman was actually a part-time employee then. I know Ken's got a bad rap going for ruining so many Kickstarters, and I think that he had great ideas, but he absolutely has no follow-through at all. Yeah. In taking from Peter to pay Paul, and that kind of thing. But he would take over running the store on Saturday afternoons, and I got to run Dungeons and Dragons up until I wanted to quit. So we'd order a bunch of pizza, generally Pizza Hut pizza or whatever else, and everybody pay $1 a slice, and it'd be like, let's play D&D, and they'd play until their mothers would come and grab them, or because most of them couldn't drive yet. Most of them were like 13 years of age, and there'd be other more adult groups that would. But because I had all these kids, I probably only had about 3 or 4 adults at my table, because it was almost all young. But I love the idea of bringing in young talent.
And I do too. This game I'm running weekly, it's got everyone's between the ages of 14 and 19, and I got to tell you, there's so much energy at the table, and there's so much new. Everything's new, you know what I mean, and excitement and all of that. There's no curmudgeonly arguing over whatever rule or interpretation or something. It's kind of cool, I gotta say.
You gotta figure out a way though to get the phones away from the young people.
Yeah, that is true.
That's real difficult. I don't know how to do that, because especially now with the younger, when we're even having a tour, and the two of the gentlemen brought their sons from like Australia, New Zealand, or and the kids, while they're playing, they got their phones in hand. It's just like,
yeah, it's definitely it's a distractant. There's no doubt.
I wish there was a way to just have a blocking field or everything shuts down.
What is that? An electro? What is it called? The EMP?
Well, then you'd start ruining your hard drives and everything around.
That might be all right.
Yeah, I would hate that. There would go all my old copies of D&D cartoons and whatever.
Oh yeah.
Except for my
There would go Troller Games and all of these wonderful maps would disappear. Except those maps in a tube that are somewhere buried.
I've got lots of maps like the 6th level and other things that thank God for things being kept on hard drives. Or in those days.
Yeah, I found, and this is just kind of funny. So way back when, Davis bought, when we were gaming, when we were kids, he bought the folio version of Greyhawk, which is what, 1980, 1981, I guess? Something like that. I use those maps so much that, you start folding them constantly and the crease begins to break. That somewhere, somehow, I don't remember doing it, but I got them laminated. And there's little scribbles on them here and there. But I found them the other day buried in a TLG mailroom in a tube. I was just looking for some aired maps. Popped the tube and these old 30-year-old maps came out. Very, very used. Much abused.
Well, when I did that original 6th level, which is the huge 10 squares to the inch graph paper map, I'll pull it out. But the original, I sold it sometime when things were down, but luckily a picture was kept of it in parts, so we had to reassemble the parts later to bring it back. But I just used shipping tape over a big piece of cardboard to attach this map and to keep it safe. So somewhere, that's what I even brought down to the first TrollCon in 2001. So I had that with the plane. And that was all you guys were supposed to try to work your ways back up. But I think you guys only got to the 5th level before being butched off.
Yeah, I actually remember that. Alyssa, you'll appreciate this. I was watching, so he was running about 10 or 15 people at a table through his own dungeon. And I was kind of, it was a little bitty convention, and I was coming and going, and I stopped to check on the game, and so they were all first level, and they were on the 2nd level of the dungeon or whatever, and then they went down this ramp to like the 5th level or something, and as Ernie's turning the page, you can see the monster levels ratcheted really high up, the hit dice. I whispered to Ernie, I said, Ernie, they're going to get annihilated if they go against any of these. He goes, I didn't tell them to go down the ramp. I just fell over laughing. I thought, well, there you go. That's the old guard.
Oh, there you go. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
This is where you guys went.
Good Lord of mercy.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It really is.
Oh, yeah. This whole area here is just 10 by 10 rooms.
And I remember though, Davis used to take graph paper, and for our adventures, he would draw nothing that elaborate, but he would fill graph paper up. So now, is that your original, or is that one you've pieced back together?
That's put back together. The original is in some collector's hands for way too little, but
it happens.
Shit happens. I had some girlfriend that was happy for a while, and I had booze. That was what we were into.
Life happens. That's just the way this goes. So, what is it from the Big Lebowski? Sometimes you eat the bear, and sometimes the bear eats you. That's the way it is.
Oh yeah, like I said, with the map, I'm of course so excited over this new Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum, because that's where all the stuff was created. This is where I worked. I drew that map on the table in the center room. People are now going to be coming in to look at displays, grab a soda, whatever else, and then come into the game room, which is the old shipping department.
Now that's on the corner there of in Lake Geneva, right? You're in the same building.
Same exact building. We're trying to bring it back as much as possible, but we've added a ramp in the back, and we'll probably have to widen the door or two just to try to allow Jim Ward to be able to get him with a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Though at some and or other people's, it's not, the building of course is from way back, so it's not made for handicapped people, and there'll be many areas that aren't going to be accessible, but there at least will be some.
Yeah, that's cool.
They can get some enjoyment and still sit and play games with us.
I've long since thought that our industry needs some type of museum where, I mean, there's so much history and so much art and so much that has gone into this game material. And it's not just, Dungeons and Dragons or Castles and Crusades. There's dozens and dozens of games and war games. Just it's so much. And all of it, of course, is the root ball, for lack of a better word, for video games. It all stems from that began in Lake Geneva. And I know that there's other areas that it began, but your dad is the one who actually took it and brought it to the masses and made it into something that's beyond, guys just sitting around a table and playing. So I've long since thought some kind of museum, something where just items where you can go. I mean, I'm not a huge collector. I collect a few things, but not much. But I would love to go somewhere and be able to see the versions of book. You know what I mean? The things that came before. I know some collectors love that, and that's great. But I'm not one. But I like to see it. It'd be kind of cool. So that's cool that you're doing that, and it's really cool that it's in the original.
And there's going to be all kinds of proprietary spin-off materials that'll be similar. So we'll have a come visit my dungeon sticker that won't be the exact same artwork, but it'll sure be pretty damn close. Okay. And there's going to be t-shirts that are going to be looking with the old product and whatever. Things will be, Dustin is doing that well. So this is what, how can I be any happier than to play the game that I started playing in the old days there in the same building? And this is not a regular hobby shop. People that are coming here are going to be members or paying a fee to come in, and if they want quality dungeon mastering or whatever, if they want that, they will be paying something to be getting these services.
But you got to fund the museum somehow. I mean, all museums. I don't think you can go into museums without paying, right? They all got a fee.
But also if you're going to be playing in a game with like I or Jim Ward or something like that, there's going to be some fee built in. It's not going to be.
That's great. Hey man, I went to Roswell. I love Roswell. I would go to Roswell every year if I could. But the first time I went, I started hitting those alien museums, and you have to pay to go in, and you're just looking at some really weird stuff. It's really weird stuff.
Right, and if you want to play with Ernie or Luke or Jim, otherwise you're paying to get into a convention. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're paying for that. So yeah, it's a private little convention you've got going on over there. It's a museum convention.
Yeah, it's great.
We have a hobby shop, and that hobby shop is going to stay open, and that's called Lake Geneva Games. And that's where if you just want to get and play some free games and do things with other people's, and we'll be tied in with them. It's a share and share alike. But if you want that special experience, if you're coming and flying in from a foreign country, if you're driving and you want, this, we're going to have things. We've got some products. I think that there's some books that are like the original 3 books in Unearthed Arcana that he's taken actual books and rebound them because the covers were no good, and now it's a combined Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum edition for way too much, and gold and leather.
Hey, somebody is asking what the address is. Do you know the address?
Yes, 723 Williams Street, just like Hillbilly. Williams Street, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, WI 53147 USA.
There you go. Good deal. Yeah, that's cool.
And
now
on
you
Facebook,
need to run some GAXMOOR there.
Yes, but the trouble is that I haven't run anything to do with GAXMOOR since 1999. Luke took over DMing it in 2000, and he was running the games, and I played Mustafa Kamel was my was my guy, and he was a fat, short Arab with a turban, and I had my and that in the 3.5 they allowed everybody to get familiars, so I had a bat, and my bat's name was Saddam, so I'd lift up say, "Come Saddam," and of course this was when Saddam Hussein was doing all kinds of crazy things.
Right.
The kids were having a great time, but I would do things like as soon as we would kill something like a knoll or an orc or something like this, I would be trying to find a nice loin section or whatever else, chop it out and add curry powder and start cooking. So I was the comedy relief. So I would never make any intelligent or driving forces.
Well, you kind of wrote it, so it's yeah.
So I was the sidekick that was doing things, and I was asking players, well, I could take these spells, and with Luke and spells, you didn't just have a complete spell book. We had to find like other people's spell books, take a scroll, whatever, and waste the spells to put it in. So that's how I got Fireball. I got Fireball from I think it was an ogre ghoul mix, because in that game you could have undead affect creatures besides humans to make undead.
Yeah, I actually only played 3.0 once, so I can't remember the game very much. We published a lot of 3.0 stuff, but I only played it once, so
it was a lot of fun, and I used often for my third level. As soon as I got up to 6th level, I think I had rope trick and a fireball, so I could whip a fireball, but I wouldn't whip it until it'd be like, guys, and they'd say, "Oh, quick!" Save the day, and I'd whip a fireball, but I was always the guy running before everybody else is running and getting the rope trick, getting it up, and I would be up there waiting to pull it all back in if the fight started going negative, and once they actually did have to escape up the rope, and the party, there was a few killed and whatever, and that's how the party survived, by sitting up there for like 12 hours and coming back.
That cursed spell.
Well, it could have been another fireball, but instead it was an escape option. Yeah, I think I had him playing with like an 8 strength or something like that, just to try, so there'd be no.
So Jack in the stream here, Jack Vincent says, "I remember going to game shops that were hidden in upstairs locations via the back stairs. So nice to have actual stores now." I remember the first comic book shop we went to was, so this has been about 75, 76, and it was behind some dude's house. He went down these stairs into this kind of, I don't know, maybe it was a storm shelter. I'm not sure what it was. Had dirt floor. It had lanterns hanging, not lanterns, but lights, old yellow lights hanging from the ceiling. It was dusty, and there was just rows of comic books. I loved that store so much. It was like going into a dungeon. I don't know. I remember years ago, so for those of you who are a little perhaps my age, the newsprint that they printed comic books on and books on and all of that stuff, after it ages about 15 years or so, it's got a very, very distinctive smell to it. Now, I absolutely love that smell. I will stick my nose into a book and just breathe it in. I absolutely love that smell. And I remember once I was at a comic book shop, and I was looking through some old comic books. And there's these 2 young guys next to me. And I opened the comic book, and that smell comes out. I could just smell it. It was just absolutely wonderful. And I made a comment about it, just whatever I said. And then the kid next to me said, "Yeah, that's that smell. It smells like cat urine." It was so funny. I just fell over laughing. So I appreciate his desire for new stores, but I really like those old underground, whatever. I don't know, whatever it was. It was a different age back then. It was...
Well, it's the idea to be handicapped accessible. That's something that's how we're having to not keep it as a pure museum, or there's a lot of homes in our area that are traditional, and they can only be brought back as they were. So we're having to make a few changes to the structure, but otherwise they found some rotting wood underneath the toilet in the bathroom. This place would have probably had the wrecking ball hitting it in 10 years because the guy wasn't putting a single cent into it. He didn't have to.
Yeah. Buildings will decay very quickly.
Yes, and so what's great now is that this is saved, and now we're just having to deal with some parking issues, and I've actually contacted the mayor, and because she's a friend of ours, she also helped fight to prevent Hillmore Golf Course, which is now owned by some developer, from being destroyed into chain and block stores and whatever, big box stores. So we've got 192 acres of green space that's owned by an outside firm, but they can't do anything but leave it green, and they're gnashing their teeth and have all kinds of. They've got all kinds of no trespassing up around there, trying to say, "God damn it, we'll outwait you." I'm just glad they keep on paying their taxes, $100,000 a year or whatever it is.
But speaking of buildings falling in, GAXMOOR's filled with buildings falling in. And Alyssa, on your map, you actually drew those.
Yes. Well, yeah, because you kind of gotta. It's so I do wonder, like, so this 3D sort of isometric sort of bird's eye view, I kind of really dig it. So, but then this one came next.
So the next one we did, so the isometric is something, I just love isometric maps. I absolutely love it.
By the way, when I saw that isometric, I was researching today, and I came across it this first time I've seen it. I want to redraw GAXMOOR now isometric. I'm just telling you now.
Really?
I really do. But we'll have a separate conversation about that.
Yeah, I've seen your isometrics, and they're beautiful, so that would be awesome. So yes.
Basing it off mine, which is a little bit denser. But yeah, so what's the story? What I love about this, by the way, is if you look carefully, it's like you see the same buildings in here, in the same locations. You see the same aqueducts. You see the same everything in here. It's like they're all in here, but things were switched to a top-down view like this. What's the story behind this version of the map?
So the second version is done by Peter Bradley, and that came with the Castles and Crusades version that came out in like 2015, something like that. But we had got 2015. Boy, that's a miracle. I remember that. We had gotten, and I'm not going to list them as complaints. We'd had enough people that had mentioned that the isometric is cool, but playing it was kind of difficult. They needed a little bit more of a technical maps because there's a lot, especially with games like Third Edition. Now CNC is not this case, but you need to know distances and spaces and all of that stuff, and it just helps with so many things. So when I had Peter redo the map, I asked him to do it in a more technical format. Now Peter is not a cartographer by trade; he does great maps, but he's an artist. I mean, he paints and all of that stuff. So this is a little bit out of his bailiwick. He's more than happy to do it. He was very happy, Alyssa, when I mentioned you were doing like the maps in the CKG. Now he just says, "Well, why don't you just see if Alyssa will do that?"
Oh, I see how it is. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So,
no, but I love doing it.
He did a wonderful job here, but it's more of a technical thing, and that was kind of a response to gamers really wanting to be able to lay this thing out and know distances and all of that stuff.
I think that's a fair observation. I mean, I love this look quite a bit, and I think this is working well. But yeah, for distances and stuff, it's a lot harder to read. It is.
And you can't see the terrain around it because
right.
Sits up a mesa, sort of. So it's there's just in the Zens. I love, like I said, I love isometric. His aqueducts are beautiful. He just did a great job. But when it comes down to a practical play, and this is one of the things that I kind of get tripped up on as a publisher, because I do a whole lot of imaginative play. I don't really need a lot of content. I can take stuff that TSR did back in the day that isn't super detailed, or if it is super detailed, like T1 was super detailed, I can go either direction. I can just run with it, right? So when I'm conceiving these projects and kind of putting them together, I frequently will leave things that some gamers really do need out of it, and it's kind of an issue, and that's sort of what that David Zins was, and this kind of moved to rectify that, just to make it more the terrain. I love what Peter's done with the hills here, the little ridge lines and stuff like that. That just looks great. It gives you a good idea of where it's sitting. And you and I were talking about this just the other day on that on the other project. Terrain has so much to do with a way a city develops, a way a society develops, that it's a huge part of the game. I mean, it's all there.
So you were talking about the ruined buildings, and yeah, I mean, of course, I've got to draw the buildings, but like even in this one, you started to capture these ruined buildings in here. That was one of the things that really struck me about when I started drawing GAXMOOR. It's like there's a lot of ruin on this.
It was under assault by humanoids of all sorts. You know,
all sections burned down,
and they were being paid in loot.
So you know, one of the things that GAXMOOR is such an insanely unique project. And Peter worked on it here with the ruins, but you really brought it to life with your maps. One of the best pieces of art, I think most inspirational pieces of art I have ever seen since I have been playing these games, and even since I've been publishing, was done in T1, a village of Hamlet. And it's this guy right here, if I can get that up to it. It's the moat house.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember the moat house. Yeah.
When I started playing that moat house picture lined up so beautifully with the moat house map, and it's it's isometric and it's technical, it's all there, and that's what I wanted to capture when Peter did this, is to both show, because I mean, when Ernie wrote GAXMOOR, he writes this building is in ruins, this area has been burned down or whatever, but if you're just reading that, it's kind of hard to, when you're on the other side of it, you're trying to digest, are there orcs there, where's the treasure, what's the threat, you're not really thinking about what it might actually look like all the time. But when you have a map laid out in front of you where you can see it, it helps. I mean, it just helps immeasurably. And that's what Peter's did. And when you did yours, you took it to a whole another plateau there.
Which I'm happy to show. I just don't want to make it about my map, but this is my version of it.
Yeah.
And for me, this was about, I mean, if I actually layer these over the top and I can flick between them, I felt like I had to pay close homage to the original. I mean, you're handing me something that's got a great deal of canon to this. I can't go drawing a completely different shape and putting buildings in different locations, especially these iconic buildings. So, and even honestly, if we go back to the 3D one, we have the same roads, the same marsh, the same sort of bogs and streams running away from it. And so when they're carried on into this one, they're here, they're down here, they're over here. We have the same sort of aqueducts. The aqueducts are not represented on this map, but when I draw this, it's like I've got to stay true to the original.
An absolute perfect example of this, if you look at Peter's map here, so just beneath the city center, where you've got the center part of the city had its own wall, and there's ruins to the left and just below it. And if you flip back between Peter's and yours, you can see Peter's got the ruined buildings there, and that's fantastic. But you actually put the flame damage on the ruined buildings, so you have a better idea of actually what happened on this end of it. Now, I will give, on no, I guess we did that full color. Okay, yeah, I see. But see, on Peter's, he's got the ruined buildings, but on yours, you can actually see a little bit more. So it's just evolved in this wonderful way. It's just, I don't know, it's just amazing. And
well, I actually kind of want to know about the origins of this. This actually got pulled out on Friday, too, when I was doing an Ask Me Anything. But it's like, that's one thing I'd love to do, and I'm really appreciative of what you asked me to do with this map, because it's like I'm going to read the description, and the description makes it sound like there was a big, huge explosion right in the middle of it, and that's what I'm going to draw, So, Ernie, was there a story behind this? Did this come from a playtest where there was an explosion, or was it just...
Nope, it's all from my mind.
Got it.
There you go.
No, but when it comes, I like backstories to be made by players, and if they want to find out more, they have to go investigate into the spot. Like Donna thought that when she saw that big black space on my giant map on the wall, she said, "What? She spill her ink bottle?"
Well, here's a true story about me. So seriously, at school, I used to in art class, I used to actually sit next to a guy who had too much talent for a human being. Like he aced math, aced English, you know the type, just straight A pluses down the board. And he was also, god damn it, a gifted artist as well. There was like nothing this guy could not do. And so we're drawing our final pieces for school, and it's like, this is what you're going to be graded on. And Peter Hambling was his name. Peter Hambling, I remember you. And he was doing an Andy Warhol piece of 6 abstract American footballers. He had American footballers, then he did a robotic version, and he did an abstract version. And it's the type of thing you'd look at it and go, wow, just wow. And you know what I did? Seriously? I accidentally spilt ink on paper. And I'm not kidding now. I accidentally spilt ink on paper. And I had some dry paint crystals. And I sprinkled that over the top, and it went pow, like little blood splatters. Mine is still up on the wall to this day of that school. And I just spilt ink on the paper, I swear. So, yes, you can...
It was a subconscious creation.
Like, the teachers are like, wow. And I'm like, Peter Hamlin's probably sitting there going, but yeah. So yeah, maybe I did spill ink on this one. And actually, back in the day, Ernie, when I was all ink on paper, if I made a mistake, you've got to build that into the map somehow. You know, There's been more than once where I've been labeling a map ink on paper again, and like I'll spell something out and partway through go, what the hell is this word I'm writing here? I've got to roll with it, you know.
Yeah, well, I tell Peter all the time when he's doing stuff, you know, if you draw it, it's easier for me to rewrite something than it is for you to redraw it. I just have to hit delete and go in there.
Well, I just ordered a bunch of hex paper and a bunch of graph paper and some colored pencils, so I'm going back to old school for
There you go.
Nice.
For doing up a module for Troll Lords.
So you guys, now we're going to talk about that more, Ernie. So you guys will both appreciate this game that I'm running for these younger guys. They were in a dungeon. I think it was B1. I was running them through, and I was describing the corridors, all that crap. And I said, now, if you guys want, we can do it like we did in the old days, where I'm going to give you a piece of graph paper and describe it, and you got to map it. And they were all over it. They got in there. Of course, the map was a mess because my descriptions were a mess, but it was kind of cool. It reminded me of long, long ago.
Sadly, it's getting real hard to find people that are any skills with map making. I taught all the kids in the old days at the hobby shop, but I'm starting to see that it's few and far between that you can find someone who's really willing to put in the time to try to find the hidden monsters and things in a maze-like setting, rather than trying to just be entertained with every room with grand descriptions. And the original Greyhawk levels, a lot of my dad's stuff was basically a group of ogres, at least 3, and there'll be a fireball wand here hidden in a trap something, and then from there Dad would just wing it. Yeah. And that was all. So you can't do that in a module, of course. But that's so anybody that would find the old Greyhawk materials, whatever, they would say, well, this isn't done because there's not.
I've seen some of that
detail.
That's but that's how a lot of this writing goes, though. I'm sure it's the same with you, Ernie. I mean, I just make notes, and then when I'm writing it down, I'll say, okay, this is what I want to do here. This is a good idea, and you roll with it. And GAXMOOR, of course, is the epitome of that, because it's so hard. It's one of the 2 hardest products I have that we make to describe is the World of Error and GAXMOOR, because there's so much in the city setting itself that it's difficult to impart to the CK or DM or GM or whoever you are, and even to the players, what actually you can do in there, because it's almost limitless in GAXMOOR. I mean, there's so many things to do. You literally should be able to run a campaign from 1st to 10th level without too much. You're gonna have to add some, obviously. You got to put your own stuff in there, do your own things and have this faction do or whatever. But I mean, it's a city with streets, and the really cool thing is now, Alyssa, you and I know we struggle a little bit with this. Well, you did. I just asked if you could do it, but naming all of the street names, which I thought was just a great addition to it, because now you know what street you're on. It just adds that level of detail. I think that this thing really needs to be a computer game, is what it really needs to be.
That would be something, wouldn't it? Especially if it was 3D and you could actually walk through these real gates and see these real buildings. Yeah.
Yeah, that would just be fantastic.
Yeah.
Except you wouldn't get the DMs,
Right.
changes.
That's true.
You don't get that flavor.
I'm
No, you
actually.
won't, and that's
I'm actually a
Go
little
ahead.
bit jealous too. I've not played this, and one day I want to play this. I'm not kidding, because I think it is a brilliant setting. One thing I tried to do was add more buildings than there were in the map I was working from that don't have a description. They don't have a name. They're not present in the book. But I'm imagining players are going to hang out here. If this is like 1 through 10th level, they're going to hang out in town. They're going to get a neighborhood that's theirs, maybe a building that is theirs. So I wanted to give them plenty to explore, and the GM just to have like fodder, to work from. So even just in this area that I've got up on the screen, where we've got S4, S6, S9, I mean, I've got all of these other little buildings around that I don't know what they are. GM, you tell me. Players, go poke your nose in. Let's find out. And I love that.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to do it, because really, just as Ernie was saying, they're going to make it their own. Once it leaves, the mailroom and goes to your house, it's yours. Do whatever you want to do with it. And having everything marked is great, but also having things for them to do their own type of stuff. And what's nice here is you've got different styles of buildings. So they can do any number of things that they want here.
How did we take care of the Sobeki with the underground areas where they you go underneath the bank? Think of like alligators.
Right.
The Sobeki being like crocodile men or alligator men. I don't remember us doing anything.
That was all converted to 5th edition, and I think there's some art in there now for it too. But yeah, they're all. It's a new monster in GAXMOOR. So and you're having at it, and I know that the Sobeki now they're mostly on the outside, right?
They're not in like the inner city.
Right.
They live like in the river and underneath, and they were the guys who took care of all the aqueducts and all the other things.
So there is the Sobeki.
So which river are they living in? Are they in the swamp? Are they on the river to the east, the south?
I think down there by A30. I think I have to look this up.
Oh, okay, okay.
But yes, they were think of it like almost Edgar Rice Burroughs with Tarzan. They're kind of like the natives, and from that perspective, where they look up to the intelligent, white man or whatever. There are downtrodden but well-meaning fellows that you can make friends with, or if you're just foolish and want to fight, you can. But the Sobeki are easily willing to, be tied in and be helpful with the players, for generations they've been working for humans.
I like the whole idea of factions that you've got going on in this city, Ernie. I gotta be honest with you. The fact that, but it's very sandbox too. Like, you might upset them. Now they can't be a faction that are going to work with you, but play it smart. Get them on your side. It changes the game experience for everyone.
Oh yeah, it's completely just not. Why am I attacking this guy and how? It's working to try to. All these peoples all have their selfish and this at best you're going to find neutral characters mostly, or neutral selfish. And
Neutral selfish.
A32 said Pete. Where is A32?
So A32 is a little collection of huts. You were almost on to the left.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Right about here. I got it. Okay.
Because I gave lots of different options, but I never want to just only steer anybody into one direction, and But the little boys really had a lot of fun, of course, with the idea of being able to make their home in a spot that's a brothel. You know, these are 13-year-old boys. This was a big, and they really liked the idea that there was, when they found out that there was a passageway leading into the inner city, from the brothel leading to like the governor's quarters or whatever.
Now I'm gonna I think that we changed the brothel in the 5th edition version.
Oh no!
I think that has been changed to just an inn and tavern, I believe.
Oh, it was all written in there intelligently that this was all,
Yes, no, it was good.
As a soldier,
Cothart lame. That's great.
What was the number on that one? I vaguely remember reading the previous description for it.
Which one is which? That's it's the main inn. What is it called, Ernie?
What was the Shapely Siren in my
Shapely Siren?
The Shapely Siren.
So that's going to be 7. Is that right? I'll get there. S something.
Yeah, if someone in the chat knows, shout it out.
All right.
Because I want to see what I actually ended up drawing for that. I seem to think it was over this area.
Yeah, I've got it past it. There should be a.
Because it was able to survive because they were able to lock up the doors. Plus, they had troopers and things that were still there, as well as an attachment to the officers' quarters.
So many references to a brothel. Yeah. Well, we purged most of those, Commander. Poor Ernie. His creation. These days you got to be a little bit
more correct, huh? Well,
a little bit more circumspect to actually put it out. Audience is much broader, bigger. I mean, there's just so many more people playing. And it's kind of a troll lord philosophy. I'm making games for people to have fun and not making games for people to be, upset or whatever the hell. And there's no real reason to include stuff that, I know one of the gatekeepers in the early days for Dungeons and Dragons, for moms trying to buy stuff for their kids, and they would look at some of them and go, I'm not buying that for my kid, and you can decide whatever the moral judgment is. It doesn't matter. What just happened is your game didn't end up in some kid's hands who could be having a lot of fun with it because you wanted to do whatever. So it's been one of those philosophies I've had from the beginning to just.
Well, I still like demons and devils myself rather than a Rinny or whatever.
No, well, we definitely have demons and devils. That's. I remember once, I think I can say this on Twitch. One of our writers wrote in one of the adventures, she wrote a gang rape scene in there that was integral to part of one of the NPCs, and I was reading it and
yeah, that's not gonna fly. Nope.
Not happening here.
Nope.
She was very upset, and she tried to argue that it was all part of this. I was like, well, it doesn't. I don't care. It doesn't matter. So we're not doing that.
Is it like a Charles Bronson death wish thing where you need that motivation of the family being butched to?
I guess, but it really, it's not the place for it. Certainly not for me. So it's one of those things. We certainly don't dive into that whole whatever direction they're going. Orcs in our publications are evil creatures. That's what they are. they're just evil. But certain things will kind of.
And half orcs certainly have large proboscis, big noses.
Well, the thing about half orcs, I've never liked that race or whatever it is. Yeah, their race, right? I've never liked it because I've never quite conceived of how they only could come to the world through violence and evil, and I didn't like the idea of it. And then I couldn't weave the half orc into the narrative of my games easily. So it's one of those things that I really frown on people when they're playing. If I'm playing a campaign, just the half orc, the assassin, the monk, they can just. You find someone else's table to prosper it, just not mine.
In the CNC game I play with Chris Brown, I've got a half orc cleric fighter.
I'll tell you this: since I have been running games online, I am stunned at how many people love playing half orcs and monks. It fascinates me because I don't care one way or the other for the half orc. It's just an odd creature. But the monk I don't like. But I'm always stunned at how many people actually enjoy that class and that race. It's just, I don't know. It's just weird to me. Very weird to me.
It's the antithesis to the elf. It's
I guess so. That's true. Yeah.
It's a big, bulky, strong, constitutional,
kind of mean, type thing, crack your skull as opposed to whatever elves do. Plant a garden, I don't know what elves do.
Now, that's elfist right there.
Yeah. Well, in my defense, I just finished reading The Lord of the Rings, and, Galadriel and Celeborn are all about the Lothlorien and the trees and the Nimrodel flower or whatever it is. So that's all in my head at the moment. So.
Yeah. I'd rather read something exciting myself. Well, yes.
Oh, no, I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Huge fan of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Okay. My friend Tom Wam likes to read Civil War battlefield things that are just nothing but data. And it's a little dry. I prefer fictional things set in a real time and place.
I'll tell you this, most of my reading, 95% of it is histories. I'm actually reading a history of the Comanche right now. I just started it this morning. So mostly what I read is history books. I'll go with Tom on that one.
No. All fantasy with some sort of, and I love it when it's based off some sort of reality. The Flashman books, some of my favorite, which are... why can't I think of his name now? The guy that wrote The Flashman. It's the Tom Brown School Days villain.
I think I've seen that.
I
don't read a lot of historical fiction. A little bit once in Blue Moon.
He would really be hated in our modern times a lot because these are Flashman's Lady, the original book Flashman.
Yeah, I haven't
George
seen
MacDonald Fraser.
Well, you're getting some love on the Flashman books there in the stream. So.
Yeah, you are. They look nice. They look good. I would pick that up.
Incredible series. Fantastic. And the bad guy is cowardly, but he's strong and capable and fortunate. So things fall in his lap. He's a rake. He likes to mess around. He does everything, and he ends up becoming a lord in Britain and being quite popular.
Why does this remind me of an original AD&D character?
He even does the Charge of the Light Brigade and many other things. He keeps on going from major action to major action. He's in the Crimea. He's involved in the Civil War, all kinds of things.
So is he time hopping around or what?
Yes, he hops around the world doing all these different things.
You should read a book called The Religion. It's basically it follows it's a historical fiction that follows these three friends who end up in the Battle of the Battle of Malta, when the Ottoman Turks were attacking the Hospitaller Knights and the Spanish locals. It's a huge book, but the action in it is insane. It is just a fantastic book. I'll send you a link to it. You might enjoy it. It gets a little slow, a little dry at times, but the action in it is amazing. But it is a historical fiction thing.
There's a great trilogy from, I think, the 1700s or something like this. Sienkiewicz, I think, is the name. They're Polish, and it's all writing about Polish lancers and Polish gentlemen fighting Lithuanians, Swedes, Tartars, Cossacks, and sometimes the Cossacks are friendly.
The Poles were powerful for about 400 years, unstoppable.
Well, they had a lot of trouble because the Lithuanians are supposed to be their friends, but yet they're working with others, and the Russians keep on messing around, and the Germans, no one just leaves the Poles alone. They're always screwing with them, and they're in the middle of a whole bunch of nasty people.
Yeah, they are, because I actually played them in Crusader Kings 2 recently. I was like, I like the Poles, I'm going to play them, and like everyone around you just wants to punch your face in. Yeah. They're not in a great position in the world at all back then.
They got it rough.
But historically, they were just super sexy, the Poles.
They were. They're the only country, I think, that occupied Moscow and set up a government and stayed there for quite a while. I mean, they conquered Russia for a short period. The Poles were it for a little bit, and then they had the winged hussars, which just looked badass. I mean, come on.
these guys are the hussars. It's a period of writing that this is. The women are all shy and honest and glorious and sweet, and the men all are full of honor, and you don't fight with an unfair advantage, almost like the French knights and whatever. It's.
Yeah, I got to tell you. So I just had this wonderful vision. I know that GAXMOOR is Roman-esque. It's got the Roman walls and all of that stuff. But I just got this great vision of a good dozen mounted hussars driving through the front gates with their wings on. The whole thing. Go on. Time to chastise GAXMOOR back into submission.
Well, I think it's about time for me to start drinking my flush out stuff so I can go get my colonoscopy tomorrow. I'm already almost 2 hours late.
Well, and this could be we could totally end the stream now. Do we want to give 5 minutes for folks to ask any questions that they might have?
I don't mind.
So, folks, we're gonna let Ernie go. We're gonna end a little bit early. I've had a blast. I just Ernie, I could listen to you all day, man. I really could.
Well, come to the museum.
You got it. I'm gonna keep you to that. Actually, I'm genuinely gonna keep you to that. I've been following everything you've been posting on Facebook with a great deal of interest.
And Jeff Leeson is the curator, and so now we're just, like I said, we're just bickering with whether we have to end up going in front of a planning commission to change zoning, or whether we can just throw out the zoning that was created to allow it to be residential when it was zone business. At least so, that's for Justin and other things. I just get to be talent.
There you go.
Someone else is going to make it.
It's like printing and whatever, as far as I'm concerned. It's already in capable hands.
Yeah.
So I'm about ready to pretty much just read books and not have anything to do with anybody for a while, I'm afraid. But this is all necessary. I beat classic Hodgkin's lymphoma, and they did find nodules 4 years ago in an area that we don't want to describe too much. And because you've had cancer in one area, they want to make sure that you don't get it in another.
Yeah.
So
yep.
That's why I'm going to do all this. So then hopefully we can get this COVID situation taken care of, so that I can then plan and really this time marry the wonderful Donna Giovanni and start my life from a much better position.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
And after that, if you would write some more adventures, that would be fantastic.
I know. Well, I'm so happy. I live on a beautiful, with her, it's over an acre. We've got our own woods. She's got gardens and just all kinds of incredible stuff that she works really hard on. And because I'm not very mobile, I get out of having to do very much. So I live in an incredible setting, and she's the one who suffers. And I'm trying to figure out how to get enough money to be able to someday get her some assistance. As it is, last year I finally started getting people to mow the lawn, and we're getting some shoveling plowing done, because it's like a 7-block long driveway to even get back here. We're in the middle of a big old block, and with all kinds of, some really nice houses, some just okay houses, but we're in the middle of this whole area because this used to be stables for a huge mansion down on the lakeshore, and we're up maybe 500 feet or 500 yards from the water.
Yeah, that's a lot of shoveling, though.
Yeah, it's a ton of shoveling. And yeah, so yeah,
I had to shovel for about 10 minutes, about 5 minutes the other day. I was so mad I couldn't see straight.
And see, I do believe a little bit in like the old first edition, where I don't think a lady should be able to have an 1800 strength and possibly and all these sorts of things. But Donna probably has. If we had to ever really wrestle, I might come out in the short end, and I'm not a small guy. She's strong, because she's done physical labor.
Yeah, I was in the Army, so all of the women, they're just as strong. I've done that. So.
Maybe I don't think the top end is the same, but
hey, Clever, how's it going?
Sport dexterity.
All right, so I think we should let Ernie go
Okay.
and start his thing. And I personally have had a blast today. So I want to thank everyone just for hanging out.
All right.
Well, thanks for having us, Alyssa. This has been a great hour and a half.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks very much for visiting and allowing Ernie and Stephen to talk about GAXMOOR and a whole month besides.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.